Well, good morning, everybody. This is DearMamaSal on a, quite warm, 7 degrees here in British Columbia, southern British Columbia, which would equate to about 45 in American. It feels a little cooler than that, quite honestly. In which case you're probably wondering, well, Sal, if it does, where's your coat? That's a very good question. It's hanging on top of my banister. Yes, anyway, having answered that question. Okay, now I am seeing wet stuff on my windshield. And it's about now that I give thanks to Carly, who sent me that cute little umbrella to keep in my carry-all. Thanks, Carly. So she heard me say this too many times. You do get the general idea that I'm not totally awake when I leave home, right? Getting out of the house is more important to me than actually dressing appropriately. Now, I know that a lot of you probably listen to the weather forecast and check it before you leave home. I don't. You know, normally my first indication of what the weather's doing is when I open my front door and go, oh dear. Well, actually, I don't say oh dear, but it would be equivalent to oh dear, but not quite as polite. And then it's a case of, do I want to rush upstairs and go and get my coat? No. I'll just keep going and walk quickly through the rain. I mean, rain really isn't going to do me a lot of harm, right? So, lots of that wet stuff coming down now. Anyway, that's really going to mess with my mentality this morning, I can tell. For a smart woman, you can be so stupid, so. Anyway, where was I? Yes, good morning. Just wanted to say that I hope you all had a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. I was about the only... Well, that's not true. I wasn't the only person to celebrate St. Patrick's Day at work yesterday. There were quite a few of us wearing green, but I was the only one that went, I think, that had a pin on or anything. It was really an incredibly quiet St. Patrick's Day. Normally we are into it in a big way, and for some reason people weren't, so I kept pretty quiet about that. It was a nice uneventful day at work. No major fires to put out, so I was grateful for that. I could just knuckle down and do the work that I needed to do, and that was good. So I had a request. I've got a bozo in front of me. If you notice that I'm hesitating a bit this morning, I've got somebody in front of me that is older than I am, has wifey in the car with him, and keeps moving from one lane to the other. Seriously, he's got a clear road, nobody in front of him, and then he stood on his brake. Now he's indicating to go, really, what can I say? Thankfully he went to the right. but I would say offhand that person is an accident waiting to happen. Alright, let's concentrate. So, no, I'll not totally concentrate. I had a request from a viewer last night, and I really love it when you guys send those to me, and where I can, as you know, I will cover them for you. But this particular request was from, I think it was Jennifer, and if it wasn't Jennifer, forgive me. I think it was Jennifer who asked me to talk about illnesses about which people know very little, if at all, and also are not visible. Now, obviously, the obvious example of that would be mental illness, where there's an illness that gets treated by drugs, but it's not an illness people can see. Now, in her case, it's interstitial cystitis. Sorry, that's a mouthful any way you say it. Interstitial cystitis. It sounds like I got too many teeth in my mouth, right? But what it is, for those of you who don't know, it is a bladder illness, disease, I want to say. Now, don't get that confused with an inflammation. For any of you who've had a bladder infection, that's not the same thing. Okay, now, however, for any of you who've had a bladder infection, you know how incredibly painful that can be. And so be aware that the disease, the illness of it, is extremely painful for the person who's got it. And from what I can do, I did a little bit of research, and very, very little, and obviously I'm not a medical person, so what I'm about to say is purely my very brief understanding of skip reading a few things on this. But basically what I understood, if I got it right, and I hope Jennifer will correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is extremely painful, and as the bladder fills up, it gets increasingly painful. And so you can get a little bit of relief by voiding the bladder, but then you end up, you know, with it obviously filling up again, and there you go, you're off into major pain again. So this, you know, this is really, really difficult to take, I would think. So I asked Jennifer to let me know what specifically she'd like me to talk about. Whoops. But here's what I want to say. That like so many things in life, nobody can feel that pain but you. Right? So you can try and describe it to people, but you know, unless somebody has had it, they don't know. I've always said about mental illness, it's very difficult to explain that if you are in it without having been diagnosed and when you're not on the medication. Once you're on the medication, you should be able to function pretty well if you choose to, because that's what the medication does, is it equalizes you out. But if you are in depression and don't realize it necessarily, and not being treated, you know, then it's very difficult to explain to somebody what that feels like, and it's not pleasant. Not pleasant at all. And so I think that part of our job as those that suffer from these sort of things is to talk about it a bit more, is to educate people. And not that, you know, most people don't want to talk about diseases, right? Because it's not pleasant. How many of you were taught that, you know, don't discuss things that are uncomfortable? Many of my viewers will say to me, oh, I don't want to talk about that because that's not a fun thing. Well, that's part of our problem with today's society, I think. If the only things we talk about are the fun things like makeup and dating and well, you know, if that's all we talk about, there is no reality, then you might as well live in Disneyland. Because that's the life you're living. You're not living a real life. You're living in Disneyland. And I think, you know, I've helped a lot of people in depression in my time. And one of the things that I will listen for is Disneyland talk, as I call it. Well, they'll go, well, I wish he would do, you know, because they're normally blaming somebody else for the reason that they're not happy. Well, I wish he would do X, Y, and Z. And I had a sign that I used to put up which said Disneyland is over there. You know, I mean, it's, yeah, take a plane, it's that way. Because they spent the whole time going, I wish, well, if only. And so my reality is that, you know, this person isn't doing that, so get a grip. And if you're sitting around waiting for somebody to change, you've got a long wait coming, lady. Let me tell you that. You've got a long wait coming. Because from my experience, and then you get into the, well, maybe I haven't loved him enough. Really. The last time I checked, and I could be totally wrong, but we shouldn't have to perform to be lovable. When I say perform, you know, we are either lovable or we're not. As you can tell, I get a little bit passionate about this subject. And so, when you look at illnesses that cause you a lot of pain or discomfort, I think one of the kindest things you can do is to actually educate those around you in a non-vulgar way. And I say a non-vulgar. I mean, we really don't want to know all the intricate details of it. That would be vulgar, and it, you know, could be offensive to some. But, you know, if you can relate it to something and sort of say, well, if ever you've had a bladder infection, you'll know how painful that is. Well, you know, if you could multiply that by 2, you're probably getting close to what it's like on a good day. Now, I think people can relate to that. You know, you've given them something that they can relate to. I had a period of my life where I had fibroids. And they were pretty bad, apparently. And they were bad enough that I needed some pretty swift removal of them for fear of the obvious. And for those of you who don't know what the fear of the obvious was, that there was some concern whether they could turn cancerous. So here was the thing. I needed to have an operation, but unfortunately it was in the summer, and a lot of the beds were closed for the summer vacation, you know, during August and early September. So the doctor told me, you know, I'd have to wait. I'd have to wait until they opened up more beds, because this wasn't considered an emergency. Well, hello? This wasn't considered an emergency because they couldn't feel my pain. So what I did was have a quite serious discussion with my doctor, with the surgeon. And I said, I need you to know I have a very high pain threshold, apparently. That's what I've been told by many surgeons, and I've had a few surgeries in my time. And I want to tell you something. This pain, for me, is at the moment sitting at about a 7 out of 10. And he looked at me and he said, really? And I said, yeah, it's sitting at the moment at about a 7 out of 10. And he prescribed me some drugs that were different. I'm not sure what they were. But within a week, that 7 out of 10 was up to at least an 8. And I told him. I said, okay, I'm past being amused now. This pain is now crippling. And I'm not a wuss. And this is really crippling for me. And then I said, do I have to go to the States and pay for an operation? Is that what I have to do? And you know, there's sometimes that being in the the Canadian healthcare system is wonderful, and most of the time, 99.9%. But I must admit, this particular bit of timing for me was not the best. And so I had to literally make a noise. When I say make a noise, I had to be begging him to find me a bed so he could do this operation. And I was literally about to remortgage my house to get the money to go down to the States if necessary to have this operation. And I told him that. If that's what you're going to make me do, I can't afford it, but I may have to, because this pain is unbearable. Anyway, the good news was that they actually did let me have the operation now. And all is well, thank goodness. But here's the thing. I cannot imagine what it must be like if you have that sort of level of pain and, you know, an operation's not going to fix it. And I'm thinking of a number of my viewers that exist with pain. You know, that actually are in incredible pain with no way out of it. And so they live with it on a day-to-day basis. You know, to me, I am in awe of them. I really am. And I know from talking to a couple of them that it just is what it is for them. They're very almost at peace about it. You know, they're not. They just live their life in pain, and serious pain. And so my heart goes out to them. I really am not sure that I have what it takes to go through that, and I hope I never find out whether I do. So, for Jennifer and the rest of you that exist in pain, I really do encourage you to keep reminding us what this is like. I always remember Chloe, for example, when I first met Chloe from England, and she was describing her hypermobility syndrome, and she said it was just really the matter-of-fact way that she described it to me. And she said, Sal, if you drop something on the floor, can you lean down and pick it up? And I go, yeah. And she said, well, if I lean down and pick up something on the floor, I can dislocate 3 bones if I don't do it very carefully. Well, you know, I could actually relate to that, the way she said it. And, you know, in my mind, I'm busy leaning down to pick up something off the kitchen floor, and I'm trying to imagine what it's like to dislocate 3 bones when you do that. And imagine living your life so every movement you make could dislocate a whole series of bones. I don't have that bravery. All right, so everybody be thankful for the fact you don't live your life in pain if you don't. And if any of you have any support that you have to give, we've got a group of people who, as I said, are existing with pain. Now, I know that at least one person started a website for people existing with pain, and I believe you'll find it on my Facebook page. If you look, it's one of the pages that I clicked as a like. So you'll see it there if you look on my Facebook page. Before I forget, please, for those of you who haven't done so, please go visit DearMamaSal.com and just have a look down the right-hand page. We're beginning to revamp the blog page. And what we've done is we've added a few things and we've moved a few things around. So I'd like some feedback. Does it read more easily? What would you like, in what order? In other words, when you do go to the DearMamaSal.com page, are you going there for the broadcasts? I think some of you know that we've put a special page in just for the broadcasts. So now wherever we are, you don't have to worry. You just click on the broadcast page and it'll show you both broadcast links, and one of them's going to be running, which means, or one of them will be about to run. So you won't even have to think, you'll just be straight there. We're doing lots of experiments here. All right, so in the meantime, give me your feedback. I'd like to know what you like or don't like about it. I'll take a deep breath. None of us like criticism, but constructive criticism is always useful. This is Dear Mama Sal saying thank you and bye-bye for now.